So once more, a warm welcome to the fifth Ask Me Anything with Joep de Jong on Appreciative Inquiry and Leadership. And yeah, I'm very glad that you are here. And I hope you brought along some good questions. But before we start with the questions, I would suggest that we just take maybe half a minute. I put on the timer in silence. Close our eyes or keep them open, whatever, and just kind of say goodbye for the next hour of what we don't need in this hour together, of our busy lives and our busy day, and just become aware of who we are and where we are and how we are. And then we check in with one word, 2 words, or max 1 sentence. So, time starts now. 30 seconds of silence. Slowly but surely you can come back to yourself. 30 seconds is really not a lot. And just listen into yourself. What are the 1, 2, or 3 words or the 1 sentence with which you want to check in today? And you can do so by either writing that into the chat or to just unmute yourself and share your 1, 2, or 3 words with us. Well, then maybe I start for the beginning, and whoever feels that he or she comes after me can join me. I am checking in with gratitude, a bit of autumn laziness, and being moved and touched by what is happening in Gaza. Joep is feeling privileged and grateful to be here, and curious about Luke has been showing feeling vibrations in my back. That's what Luke is writing. And there's someone else who wants to check in. Rita says, silence in body or silenus. Silence. I just read it as silence in the body. But if I'm wrong, then I hope you correct me. And Sami is writing, 1 word is the most important. Insight and future thinking. All right. Beautiful. Well, thanks for checking in with us. And now I'm giving the word with a warm welcome and thank you, Joep, that you take the time for us. So maybe you want to open the floor as well for those who are joining us for today's AMA call.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. Well, Vera, thank you for organizing this and opening the floor. Always a privilege. And I love the different remarks. I mean, most important being insightful and future thinking, the silences, and the vibrations in my back. I guess it's a lot about feeling here and experiencing. And that you mentioned, Vera, at the beginning that you feel very much engaged in what's happening in Gaza. Maybe the people who are attending should know that we recently worked for the World Food Programme, who are very much involved and engaged in what is unfolding there, trying to help and bring hope in a situation that is very challenging. And when you raised the topics that you did, Vera, in the invitation, I felt that to be a real challenge, because normally we share our stories from the space of appreciative inquiry, and they're usually the stories through which we build our relations and continue to build our relations. But sometimes it appears that there is an end to that. There is no longer any relation almost possible. So I think this might be a very interesting dialogue that we're going to have, a very interesting conversation to test and to see where approaches like appreciative inquiry, and I don't think appreciative inquiry is the only one, but approaches like appreciative inquiry and our thinking around social constructionism still might provide hope and help to get us insights in future thinking, Sami, as you so beautifully wrote down. So with that, I guess and that's what the name says of these sessions. Ask me anything. I'd like to check in whether there are any questions from your end as participants in our conversation, in our call, that you'd like to raise, so we can get into the conversation and the dialogue from the perspective of the questions that may be around. So, Rita, Luc, and Sami, are there any questions from your end that you'd like to bring forward and that we might talk about, that I might address, and that we then have a conversation about?
Yeah. There are a lot of friends of mine in the Gaza and Israel. That's what I'm feeling now and knowing now. And I'm working with refugees from Ukraine. And that's yeah, around that are a lot of questions and hopes and feelings. And how can we do anything from here? That's what my base was.
Thank you, Rita, and it's so nice to see you on the call. I guess there is already a long history that we know each other, and I guess your question is a very fundamental one, and whether it's Ukraine, whether it is the Gaza Strip, or whether it's any conflict area. I mean, with WFP, we talked about Sudan. There is a world that is full of conflict, and I guess the almost simple answer, but I know that it is very complex, but in a way the essence of the answer is as simple as us being here together. And I think the reason why we can be together here the way we are right now is, in my view, twofold. And the one of these elements is that it is about understanding that we are in service of each other, in relation with each other, therefore in service with each other. And and not only each other, but also the world around us. But I think we're not talking about nature here, and we're not talking about climate things, but we're talking about the human interaction. So to me, in appreciative inquiry and social constructionism, it's like Kent Gergen says, it is all about relations, but it's not just about relations, but it's understanding that you are in service to each other. And that is what in a lot of the conflicts that we see, whether again it is Gaza, whether it is Sudan, or whether it's Ukraine, we really seem to forget this fundamental human interactive part that we are supposed to be in service. This is what, and some of you have heard me say that before. This is what I think they also mean by the concept of Ubuntu. I am because you are, which in essence is this notion of being in service to each other. So I think that is one. The second part is that these conflicts come about because something in us humans thinks that we have and own an absolute truth, and we're prepared to kill for that truth. I mean, that's what we see happening in Ukraine, in Gaza, and in actually in many conflict areas. I mean, I mentioned Sudan, but Central Africa is the same. There are areas in Nigeria where this is happening, and there are areas in Asia where this is happening. So we seem to be holding on to a truth and not being prepared to listen to each other, which is an ultimate danger in any relation, but also in any conversation. So if we cannot understand and are not prepared to understand and open up for what the truth of the other might be, then it's almost impossible to resolve any conflict, which I guess is the tragedy right now, is that there seem to be parties who, in a struggle for both power, but also maybe more than the power, the struggle to be right and to prove that and have no space for anything else, are forgetting who we really are and are becoming prepared to kill over the truth of whatever. I mean, I in preparation, when Vera came up with the questions about Gaza and social constructionism, when she shared that with me, I did some preparation in terms of reading, and I found one interesting article in a book that's saying, imagine Jesus, Mohammed, and the Buddha meeting each other, and imagine they would almost get into a violent disagreement about who wrote down the correct words, or who has the ultimate truth of the holy book. Or imagine that they would start by saying, wow, what you wrote is interesting. Can you tell me more? Can you please explain what you mean by that? And maybe they would find ways to respectfully, maybe even disagree, but find that the common purpose objective is to create a world whereby we can be in relation in a peaceful way. But it requires, and this, Rita, is, I think, addressing your question, as far as I'm concerned, from the most fundamental part, it requires each of us as an individual to not agree to what is happening. I'm not agreeing to what is happening, whether it's Hamas or whether it's the Israelis, but to try and say, can you share me about the pain? Can you share about the pain that have been passed on to you and that you're experiencing? And only then these conflicts can be addressed and I believe the world has shown can be overcome. But it does take, in this case, the parties in Ukraine, in the Middle East, to take that step as an individual and hear. And this is again not about agreeing or disagreeing, but I see people like Netanyahu holding on to power, as we see in many conflicts. I mean, the conflicts in Sudan is about two warlords wanting the power and forgetting that it's about being of service to the people that have entrusted you with that power. So I think it starts with that. And I know it is so challenging. I mean, I have a good friend, Jan Andre, who goes to Gaza regularly. And he said, Joep, sometimes it's beyond imagination. And I think that's what you experience as well, Rita.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a first thought, as a start of this conversation. I don't know what your reaction is. I don't know what the others think, feel, and want to share. Because I know that I don't hold the truth here. So I think that understanding that there is no truth, or there are multiple truths, like we say in Appreciative Inquiry and social constructionism, is one of the answers, fundamental answers, I think, in addressing challenges like these.
Now, I would like to. Was that for you? Yeah, okay, that's nice. So before I leave the floor to other people who might want to address, also to share their personal interpretations of what is true or not, I would like to give you, Rita, the possibility to reflect upon what you just heard and maybe ask another question if what you heard from Joep is not clear enough for you.
Yeah, it is clear, but sometimes there are no words, and that's thanks. I think it's enough.
Thank you. Yeah.
And allow me to reflect on what Rita just said, or just respond to it. Rita, you're so right. I think there was a beautiful film, I think it was made a couple of years ago, on the refugees, with regarding to the refugee crisis in Europe. And what they did is they took different people and they just had them sit in front of each other in total silence, just looking at each other. And then afterwards, I think it was simply beautiful to see what they experienced just looking at each other in silence. I just wanted to add that to what you said.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm absolutely with you. And what comes to mind when you say, sometimes there are no words. Words came later. First were our feelings as human beings.
Yeah.
We first had our feelings, and we could cry, and we could love as baby, and we could feel someone, and then later came the words and everything that comes with the intellect. And sometimes maybe it's even wise to not use words, but to feel it. Yeah. I'm gonna unpin all of you, and I'm gonna open the floor to everyone else again to see whether there's something that you would like to add, Sami and Luc.
I followed the discussion with and the information of Joep, but I'm following what's happened in the Gaza and in all of the world because I've worked more than 10 years in Africa, so this issue cannot be is I cannot say that it's not something that's not interest for me. That's not really. But today I'm very I'm exciting with the new activities I'm still doing the next weeks, and that is one of the reasons I was responding and to participate to this event this evening. I was not prepared about the issue about the Gaza and all what's happened in that region of the countries. So this week I will start in a group of crucial dialog, and it's something new for me. And I was thinking, so 10 years ago, I has been trained about Appreciative Inquiry. And I'm still doing some things about that. Now I'm already 5 years retired, so that's no problem. In the time I was working by Vincent, I was trying to use and to implement Appreciative Inquiry. It was a very big challenge to do it in an environment like Vincent is an organization is controlling and will get all the time the things under control. So that's quite different. I was very excited to know what this event will bring for me, looking forward and knowing I has been trained by Appreciative Inquiry. Yeah? And tomorrow I will start in this group, in this community about crucial dialogue. It's new for me. It's I think, and that is the question I have, the knowledge and the experience I got, and it's related to the third issue you was mentioned in the invitation. How does Appreciative Inquiry work when we circle around the negative stories? So. Yeah. This week, in this group, in this community, we are doing crucial dialogue. I hope they will not speak about negative stories. They will speak about the things that happen every day. And so my question was in myself, how my experience and my knowledge about Appreciative Inquiry can help me and should me give an advantage to be part of this new group of crucial dialogue. And that's the reason why I was participating this evening.
Wonderful. I mean, let me, and I guess that is part of these Ask Me Anything conversations. So we have the different topics, and I guess what you're addressing, and I guess Sami said it is also about insights and the future and future thinking. And I think that, I mean, your question, yeah, first of all, I always say Appreciative Inquiry is about understanding the biggest problem you have. So even when you go into a dialogue, there is that the biggest misunderstanding is that Appreciative Inquiry should be about positive or positivity. It is looking at possibilities and potentials, but it's understanding what it is that you want to talk about. If you want to engage, I mean, look at yourself. Look, what made you come here? It's because you had a question, you had a challenge around this new project that you're going to do, that your new group you're going to participate in, and you said, hey, how are we going to deal with maybe difficult situations and difficult stories? And I believe that I might benefit from Appreciative Inquiry. by bringing in something that I learned there. And I think, I mean, I think you do with everything you know, and I know that you know quite a bit about appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry is, and this is where it touches on the dialogues, and the dialogue is that dialogues and appreciative inquiry are all about questions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about questions. But as it says in appreciative inquiry, it ought to be a faithful question. So it's not about just questions. So what can I just ask? But what can I ask from what I quite often these days call the space of being lovingly curious?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a control question. It's not, do you know the principles of AI? Do you know the steps of AI? No, it is really about what help me understand what it is you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And this then does link to what we talked about, what I shared with Rita, is then that there is this notion that what the other tells you is their truth, which deserves to be respected. You don't have to agree necessarily. I mean, if it is a complicated situation that we just talked about, then stepping into a position is what I would say almost kills the dialogue. The dialogue is about trying to understand what are the different facets of the diamond, the statue, whatever it is you want to discover and want to disclose. And again, having a difficult or a complicated story or a challenging story, or if you wish, a problem, in my view, the dialogue is really intended to bring about clarity on that topic, which is difficult in itself, because the dialogue often is also used by people to prove their point, to show how smart they are. And this is why I mentioned this aspect of trying to be lovingly curious. I mean, what is it? How can I help you, Luc, to get more prepared for this session that you're going to do with this group? That, to me, is what it is about. And it's not about telling you what to do. I mean, tell the people that there are 4 steps in the AI process and there are 5 or 6 principles. That's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
The dialogue is about thinking what are the questions that I feel might be important for this group. And I'm also going back to how can my questions be of service to the group. And ultimately, it is to discover collectively, and this is where AI again comes in, to discover collectively what it is really that you're trying to talk about, that you're trying to discover, that you maybe try to find a solution for, whatever may be. And regardless of how difficult that situation is, trying to learn and understand what it's about. And I mentioned this also at the beginning. This is where I believe in Ken Gergen's work, that it is all about relations. It's all about the relationships that we build. So I don't know if this is in any way helpful to what you're going to do or trying to do.
I mean, the most important what have been said for me is lovely incurious, and I was never thinking about that, but that is what I get now today, and I will take it off with me on this first participation next Tuesday, because I know only one person. Is a friend. I met him more than 20 years ago, and he was always busy in the safety business, on the high level of the industries like Total, Alcatyne, and all these most companies. And 50 years ago, he started this kind of community about crucial dialogue.
Yeah.
And now he invited me because we met again 2 weeks ago, and he said, "Look, you have to come to our community, and you will be happy." And I accepted because he wrote a book 10 years ago, and he'll give it me as a gift. So I'm still curious what this community is doing and on the crucial dialogue. So I'm very excited to know what will happen, and I go there without any obstruction, I feel free, and I'm going, and but the word you said is be lovely of curiously. That's most important. Yeah, thank you.
So if I just may add, Vera just put a link to an interview by Nadja Taranczewski with Jacob Trollbeck. She put the link there. It's and I've read it. I've listened to him. You can both read the article and listen to him. He doesn't use the word lovingly curious, but he's really talking about the dialogue. Very interesting, and I think that what I share with him is that it's not just about being curious, as I heard you say, look at it, but it's indeed adding this component and say, how can I be lovingly curious? So how can I be of service in the conversation? How can I be helpful in the conversation so we can discover what really drives us and triggers us and brings about a better situation, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And I would also add not only lovingly curious, but also effective. It's very interesting to read it from the perspective of how can I effectively communicate, because we are communicating the whole time. The question is whether we do it effectively.
Yeah.
And he's obviously really a master in that. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I, Vera, I mean, just I would. So I've read the article and I liked what he writes there. And my personal hunch is that you should start with lovingly curious and then make it effective. Effective to me has in the wording starts to border to let's do something very effective, and then words like control are on the edge or are nearby. So let's be lovingly curious, if possible, in an effective way.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Lucas, your question addressed sufficiently.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Have we been communicating effectively?
and lovingly.
All right.
I will do it in the next days.
Good done. Thank you, Luke. And I would like to get in Sami, because he was in the meanwhile writing a question into the chat. And and here now we put you first, and I kicked out you, but I'm gonna add him again. Sami, you can obviously repeat it yourself, but he was writing why then AI always is considered with positive psychology.
Can you tell me where the question comes from, Sami? And I, because I do have an answer, but before I start to talk away, I'd rather see and understand where it comes from. What triggered that question for you?
Yeah, it's actually touched me a lot what you said, that it's mistakenly appreciative inquiry looked at within positive psychology.
Okay, so now let me then,
That's why I always it's part under the big umbrella of positive psychology. And I would like you to expand on your notion and your argument why you think it shouldn't be considered as psychology.
it's a both end. So I will try and explain it from my perspective, my truth. I mean, Rita and by the way, Vera as well started by mentioning the issues in Gaza and how elements like social constructionism might be linked, and how appreciative inquiry might be linked to them, and maybe even help in a positive sense. I guess, why do I mention that? And as I mentioned also in my introduction, I think I was very grateful for Vera to come up with some well, amongst the biggest problems we currently are facing. And I think that is what appreciative inquiry is about. It's understanding what is really causing the problems as we face them. Now, the simple example that I usually give, and now it may be a little bit too simple, but I'm still going to use it, is the one that happens between people quite often. That is that there is a communication issue or a communication problem, like we see in many organizations. And what we normally do, Sami, is that we point at whose fault it is. So if Vera and I would have an argument or a disagreement, she might be pointing at me saying, you don't understand it, you don't listen to me, and you should go to a course. And I may do exactly the same. I say, Vera, you don't understand it, you should take the course, and we're not getting anywhere. So now the secret to me, if we would change that, and I'm bringing Luke's perspective in here as well, Luke's question, if we would become what I then call lovingly curious to each other. So we acknowledge that communication apparently is not going very well between us, but we become, in a sense, lovingly curious towards each other. So, and I do that from the perspective that I think that we do hold a truth. So Vera mentioned earlier, before the words, there were the feelings, there was the emotions. And so I think we feel deep inside what is right and what is wrong. And we have been able to listen to that when we were a child. This is where the stories come in. This is why, if I were to ask Vera, Vera, could you tell me, honestly, can you tell me a story about a time that you really successfully communicated with somebody else in maybe a challenging situation? What happened? And if she were to do the same with me, because it is a two-way stream. I mean, in appreciative inquiry, if there is only one party that asks the question and only one party that listens, then it's not going to work. So this is why one of the essential things is that in a dialogue, you listen and you share. Now, here is the link to positive psychology, because the work by, amongst others, Peter Senge, but by Marcus Buckingham, but also by her name just slips my mind, Barbara Fredrickson, is that what we know from positive psychology is that repetition, by the way, in both ways, recreate the connections we have created in our brains. So when people say you cannot change your way of thinking, their argument, as said, Barbara Fredrickson, Marcus Buckingham have done extensive research there, and written all kinds of articles on it. And I tend to think what they say is right, at least I understand their argumentation, and I think it might be a truth, which is correct, is that if we manage to share in a repetitive form this these elements of positive psychology in the sense of asking the right questions, being lovingly curious, we will rewire our brains, is their argumentation, and start to see possibilities and potential. Yes, we'll share the names. I see, right, the names of these positive psychology. So I mentioned Marcus Buckingham, who's written extensively about it. Barbara Fredrickson, who's done a lot of work, and I think Peter Senge has done many things, but he is talking about positive psychology as well. And it's a way that we can, in which we learn. So we are capable of rewiring our own brains up to a certain extent by looking at certain patterns. And if these patterns are positive stories or stories of strength, rather than stories of weakness and things that went wrong, we start to create this path towards possibilities and potential, as I often say. So this is where the link with positive psychology is. That does not mean that we should and could not start from this space of understanding what the real problems are and how big the problems are. I mean, if I go back to Rita's question on Gaza and Ukraine, trying to understand what was really happening there and how the past played a role in what is happening now, then that's fundamental to have a sound dialogue. Because if you do not take the full notion of information into account, you can never have this dialogue. And this is where this lovingly curious dialogue. So tell me more. This is Jane Watkins, the late Jane Watkins, always used to say, tell me more, tell me more. Trying to understand what is the complexity of the issue. And then from that perspective, and that's what Appreciative Inquiry does, say, well, okay, if we have identified those themes, what can you tell me about living peacefully together? That's just an example. And if you continue to repeat those kind of stories around possibilities, this is where positive psychology comes in, and where we know, at least that's what academic research shows us now, that by repeating these stories of strength, which were rooted in the issues and the problems we had, create an environment whereby, as said, a world of possibilities and positive outlook. You mentioned the word future. Let me see, with your future thinking in a constructive way opens up, and so part of it is really, Sami, in the repetition. So, and we know this from businesses and in communication, we should try and look at the use of words that will help us to rewire our brains. And the point, and this is one of the research parts I know that Barbara Fredrickson did, she analyzed a lot of corporate memos and she looked at the words that were being used. And the interesting thing is that she found she found a correlation, let me rephrase it. She found a correlation between the words being used and the results of those companies. i.e., when there was a lot of not, no's, don'ts, etc., the company's results were worse than when the company's memos, letters, and I trust the speak and the feeling that goes with the speak were about the possibilities, the potential, the yes, the possible, etc., etc. So this is where the link between appreciative inquiry and positive psychology is. And again, notwithstanding the starting point that it is often about what is really engaging people, which might be a very serious problem. Does that help, Sami? Does that in any way provide?
Yes, of course. It's actually open up the way it can be approached, and the link between the words and the action is very obvious. I actually get trained in NLP to a practitioner level. This goes back to 2000 and 2004. And there is a great emphasis within NLP about the language person using and how to actually paraphrase these languages within therapeutic or coaching setting to help that person actually to solve any issue or conflict at life or work.
Yeah, I fully agree, and that so that's a really clear parallel. I knew that from NLP, but that's a very clear parallel with appreciative inquiry. And this is, and I guess both are supported, whether it's NLP or whether it's appreciative inquiry, by the work of these positive psychologists.
And going back to the conflict, global conflict, I think the source of the problem that still, whatever the civil human has actually reached out in terms of making life easier, utilizing resources, technology, the more the human actually become more civil and utilize technology, it's actually the more civil, the action less ethical they become. It goes, never goes in line, because the trigger, this is my rationale of it, the trigger for advancing in technology and becoming, making life more, the welfare is not actually focused into the human. It's actually focused into making more profits.
Yeah.
Within the corporate. That's why the civilization aspects of living advancing, but the ethical and the human consideration is actually being decreased.
Yeah, Sally, I think I can only agree, and to me, part of that can be found. So so I guess said I agree with you very much. Part of that can be found is that you talked about the increase of civilization and the use of technology, but machines, a car or a plane or a boat, is not ethical. There is nothing about it. They don't have this feeling or sense of being ethical. It is us humans who decide whether the use of it becomes ethical or not. But we look at all these technologies, and you know, whether we take a bomb or a rocket, there is nothing ethical about that. There's also not ethical, but it's how we use them or not use them, decide not to use them, that determines where we're going. But we put our faith almost in the technology, and they have become, should I say, so huge. They are almost the commanding factor to make sure that the technology advances. It is us who play the ethical part, and here is that an organization in itself doesn't want to make money. That could be a goal of an organization, but it's the humans who decide whether it should make a profit or not. So we are the driving factor here. And I think in a way we can't blame, could be an interesting question, whether we can blame the organization for being and making a profit at the cost of others. And I think it's really us. We are still at the, what is it, the steering wheel, the driving wheel of organizations, of anything that has to do with technology. I feel.
And then the conflict, if we add to it the historical context and the background, this would make it worse. But I like the word you mentioned, the conflict in Sudan, where the rivalry between the leaderships, who's actually supposed to be serving their people. And similar situation happened in Syria.
Yeah.
And every time I remember that the leader who actually killed his people and bombarded their houses with a cheap bombing. The Syria actually produce local, I don't know what's the proper term actually to describe it. They don't use shells or rockets to bombard their people. They used a very cheap handmade explosive and throw it from the airplane, just dropping it to the houses and apartment complex. And the devastation is still there outside Damascus because it's the same situation. There is ethical issue in our world now.
So you, both of you, kind of directed already the topic towards an interesting challenge that I guess we all face, either directly or indirectly, but I would even guess directly, the topic of how we are affected with and without money by our both loving and evil sides that we have to as human beings. In that light, and also looking at the clock, I would like to direct your attention to another AMA call that is happening on the topic of money, source, and love in business. So if people are interested in exactly these kind of topics, how can we be unethical in our organizations, or how can we be unethical with regards to our followers as leaders? Then I would wholeheartedly recommend the AMA call led by Nadezhda Taranchevsky with Peter Koenig. I can highly recommend them. And they are happening.
Second Vera's voice,
22nd of November. I just shared the link in the chat as well for those who are interested. And with that, I would say we're 3 to 7 o'clock Central European time, which means 3 minutes to go. And I would like us to check out. And my suggestion would be, if you like that, I'm gonna kind of put us again out of the spotlight altogether. I would suggest that we go again into silence for maybe a minute. And then whatever words are coming up, we share them and call it a day. I'll put on again the clock, and then you have 1 minute of silence, either with closed or with open eyes, starting now. And slowly but surely you can come back. And whoever has their words ready to check out, please unmute yourself and check out. Sami is writing, trust, share, respect in all highly needed in our globe. Luke is sharing, vibrations stop and the back becomes warm. That's nice. At least that sounds like nice for me. I hope it's nice for you as well, Luke. And something else coming up? Or Rita, you want to share out loud? Whatever feels right for you. Hope for the future. Well, that's something good to check out with, I guess. You, what are your words?
Yeah. My words is I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to your questions and the conversation we had with all of you here. It felt a bit like it still feels. It doesn't. It feels like that. I mean, we started in Gaza and Sami by accident, I think, or by accident, we ended with Syria. So we stayed, we honored, sounds like crazy, we honored the conflict, but I think the way we talked about it, to me, provides hope. I mean, if we can talk like this, then others, all we need to do is widen the circle, put it that way. And so I think that's very important. And Vera, I'm very grateful to you for organizing this. I'm strongly supporting you in the recommendation for Peter and Nadia's Ask Me Anything call, especially given the topics that were raised. And for coming up with these questions and having the courage and being lovingly curious about these items. So thank you so much.
Well, I guess let me echo that, more or less everything that has been shared in our checkout. I'm also very happy that the three of you, or the four of you showed up, well, including Joep. That would have been a bit strange if he would not have shown up. And I'm also just really down to earth checking out with a growling stomach. I'm really looking forward to my dinner. So in that sense, gratitude and hunger, and you're warmly invited to join the next AMA call as well. I have actually, to be really honest, no clue when that will be, but we'll announce it on the, do you know it by any chance, Joep?
It's in the second half of November. I think it's around the 24th, I think. So, but I'm not altogether sure.
Okay, let's assume it's the 24th. No, it seems not to be the 24th. Maybe we have to still announce something.
No, it was announced, but I'm not indeed. We'll come up.
Never mind. You'll see it on LinkedIn. And if you're missing it, you can send us an email or whatnot as a message. So have a lovely evening, everybody. Wonderful that you've been here, and take good care and of yourself and whatever you are up to.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Well done, Mr. de Jong.